Hello, welcome back to Unit 3, Lesson 9, Part 2. Sorry I had to stop that one, but I was having some major computer issues. But this part shouldn't go too long, and that part was getting long anyway. We are working on the target. I can recognize multiplication links. Something really important to know about multiplying with fractions is when you multiply by a fraction by a fraction less than 1, your product will be less than your original fraction. When you multiply a fraction by a fraction or the number fraction equal to 1 or 1, your product will be equal to your original fraction. And finally, if you multiply a fraction by a fraction greater than 1, you will get something greater than that first fraction. So what you're doing is predicting how the size of a fractional factor will affect the size of the product relative to the other factor. So here is page 108. I'm going to scroll through it slowly in case you just want to look at the pause and look at the video to do the problems. What I'm going to suggest you do is always estimate first based on your two factors. What is your product going to be? So like I said, you can look at the video, pause it, and do the problems in your notebook, and then play it and watch me do them. Or what you can do is watch me do a problem, or do this problem, watch me do it, then do the next problem, watch me do it, so on and so forth. It's up to you. 16. A box of granola weighs 18 ounces. A box of cornflakes weighs 7/9 as much as the granola. Do the cornflakes weigh more or less than 18 ounces? Okay, so if I want to know is here is 18 ounces. 18 ounces is also a box of granola. So granola is 18 ounces. Cornflakes are 7/9 of that. So I have to partition it into 9 equal parts. That's 2 parts, 3 parts, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 parts. And cornflakes weigh 7 of those parts. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 of those parts. Cornflakes do not weigh all 18, so it is less. So that's showing it in a diagram. Now, when I have big numbers, complex problems, I'm probably not going to draw a diagram. How much do cornflakes weigh? Well, cornflakes weigh 7/9 as much as 18 ounces, or 7/9 of, which means to multiply, 18. Now that makes sense because that it would be less because 7/9, my other factor, is less than 1. I'm taking less than 1 group of 18. So now, how do I multiply a fraction by a whole number? Well, since it's not a unit fraction, I'm going to put my whole number over 1. 9 and 18 can both have the same factor of 9. There's 1 9 and 9, 2 9s and 18. Gives me 14 for a numerator and 1 as a denominator. 14 over 1 is 14 ones, or 14 wholes, 14 ounces. And for some reason, ounces is abbreviated OZ. Number 17. A rectangle has 3 1/4 feet and width is 1 1/3 feet. Is the area of the rectangle greater than or less than 3 1/4 square feet? Well, area equals length, 3 1/4, multiplied by width, 1 1/3, so that would be the area. And since I have the factor 3 1/3 that I'm comparing to, is it going to be greater or less than 3 1/4? Well, my other factor is 1 1/3, which is greater than 1, so it's going to be greater. Often, I always tell students, whenever you have area of a rectangle, it's an easy one to draw. My length is 3 1/4. My width is 1, so that would be 1 multiplied by 3 1/4, but it's also another 1/3 in length. So it's 1 1/3. So it's going to be 3 1/4 squares and another third of 3 1/4. That shows right here it's greater. Now, to multiply it, why don't I do the area or the distributive property? 3 1/4 multiplied by 1 equals 3 1/4. So that's this area in here, 3 1/4 squares. Now, I'm going to add to it this other rectangle, 3 1/4 long by 1/3 wide. Now, I'm going to kind of use a shortcut on you and do it. Well, no, I won't. I'll show it. Excuse me. 3 1/3 is 3 groups of 3 wholes is 3 times 3, 9/3, plus one more would be 10/3. Multiplied by 1/3. So I still have 3 1/4 here. Plus I have 10/3 times 1/3 would be 10/9. Hold on. This is 3 1/4, sorry. So 3 times 4 would have been 12, plus 1 would be 13/4. Sorry. 13 times 1 would have been 13/12. So 3 1/4 plus 13/12. Well, 13/12 is equivalent to 1 whole would be 12/12 plus 1/12. So I'm going to convert 3 13/12 to 1 1/12. Now 3/4, 3 1/4, I need to make 12ths. So it's going to be 3 and what times 4 is 12? 3. 3 3/12 plus 1 1/12 is going to be 3 plus 1 is 4 and 4/12. And I actually know that 4/12 is 1/3. So it is going to be 4, whoopsie, and 1/12. No, 4 and 1/3 square feet. Let me talk about that. 4/12. This is supposed to be a 12. 4/12. I know the 4 and the 12 can both be divided by 4, and that's how I got down to 1/3. All right. Now, this computer is really bothering me. All right. 18. The number of students on a football team is 1 3/4 times the number on a basketball team. There are 16 students on the basketball team. Are there more or fewer than 16 students on the football team? So the football team has 1 3/4 times as much as the basketball 16. It's more than one time. So it has more. Now, how many? Again, I'm going to use distributive property because it's really going to be easy. Think of 1 3/4 as 1 plus 3/4, and then times, multiply each part by 16. Then when I'm done multiplying them, I will add them together. Why did I do that? Well, 1 multiplied by 16 is just 16. 3/4 multiplied by 16. I'm going to make 16 into a fraction by putting it over 1. 4 and 16 both have 4 as a factor. There's 1, 4, and 4, and 4 4s and 16. 3 multiplied by 4 is 12 over 1, or 12. 16 plus 12 is 28. 28 students. And that's reasonable because I knew I needed to have a whole number. There wasn't going to be a fraction of a student on the football team. 19. It's 9 4/5 miles from Justin's house to the art museum. The distance to the history museum is 9/10 this far. So it's not a whole amount as far. It's less than one whole amount. The history museum more or less than 9 4/5 miles. Since the history museum is 9/10 this far, or 9/10 of multiplying 9 4/5, my other factor is less than 1. It is going to be less. So how far is it? All right. Now I can break up this one in my distributive property. Why don't I do it the other way? Sure. I'm going to do it the other way. I'm going to take the fraction 9/10 and change 9 4/5 into a fraction. 9 multiplied by 5 is 45. So 9 wholes is 45/5 plus 4 more make 49/5. Ooh, might have been a bad idea, Mr. Springer. 9 multiplied by 49. Well, 9 multiplied by 50 is 450. So 9 multiplied by 49 is 9 multiplied by 50, 450. Subtract 1, 9. 441. Did I say 1 and I wrote a 9? 441. 10 multiplied by 5 is 50. So now, how many 50ths make a whole? 50. How many 50ths in 400? Well, there's 2 50s in every 100. So there would be 2 times 4 would be 8 50s in 400. And I would still have 41 50ths left. So, how far is it from Justin's house to the History Museum? 8 and 41 50ths miles. I don't know how comfortable I am with that. It is less than 9 4/5, so I'm somewhat comfortable. But just to be sure, why don't we give it a good look at using the other method of distributive property. So change 9 4/5, decompose it into 9 plus 4/5. Multiply the 9 by the 9/10 and multiply the 4/5 by 9/10. And when I'm done multiplying them all, add them together. So 9 multiplied by 9/10. So if I make 9 into a fraction, 9 multiplied by 9 is 81 tenths. And 4/5 multiplied by 9/10. 4 and 10 have the factor 2 in common. There's 2 2's in 4, 5 2's in 10. 2 multiplied by 9 is 18. 5 multiplied by 5 is 25. Common multiple of 10 and 25 is 50. So I have to change them into 50ths by multiplying by 5 here. And multiplying by 5 here would be 405. And multiplying both these by 2, 25 times 2 is what gives me 50. And 2 groups of 18 are 36. And 405 plus 36 is 441 again. 50ths, which is what I had right here, 441 50ths. So 8 and 41 50ths was correct. All right, fill in the blanks with equal to, less than, or greater than. If n is less than 1, so I'm doing 1 2/3 multiplied by less than 1. If n is less than 1, n times 1 2/3 is then going to be less than 1 2/3. Because I have less than one group of 1 2/3. If n was greater than 1, I'm multiplying n multiplied by a number greater than 1 2/3, then it's going to be greater. than 1 2/3. I'm not going to write the than. And finally, if n is 1, so if I take n multiplied by 1 2, so 1 2/3, I'm going to compare it to 1. Well, yeah, if I'm multiplying by 1, it's going to be equal. So whenever you're multiplying, you can always compare to figure out where your product is going to be around. Compare it to the other factor. Other factors less than 1, the product's going to be less than your factor. If the other factor is greater than 1, your product's going to be greater than your factor. If the other factor is equal to 1, your product's going to be equal to that other factor. So that finishes lesson 9. If you're going through the entire unit, you will now do the quick quiz. Good luck with your quick quiz.